Housing and Community Economic Development Committee. We have public comment cards on all items, so we did have some consent items, but now we don't. So with that, I will ask for item number 1.
Item number 1 is a communication from the Mayor and City Ethics Commission relative to the appointment of Mr. Paul C. Hudson to the Board of Commissioners for the Housing Authority of the City of Los Angeles for the term ending June 6, 2016. And this item is in council, scheduled for City Council meeting today.
Okay, is Mr. Hudson in? There he is.
Good morning.
Good morning. Please, Mr. Hudson, congratulations on your nomination, and maybe you could tell us why you would want to put yourself through this. I mean, why you would want to accept this nomination.
I've had an interest in public housing since my service on the Community Redevelopment Agency Board. And primarily it developed in South LA, the redevelopment corridors are very narrow. And therefore there's very little developmental land in South LA. So as you look for opportunities for revitalization in South LA, the biggest land banks are the housing projects, which are concentrated in South LA and low-income communities. So it started there, but I've been familiar with public housing all my life.
In some small way.
In some small way, yes, in some small way.
You've served on a number of commissions for the city over
Yes.
the years. Can you just give me a rundown of which commissions you've served on?
Community Redevelopment Agency, the Los Angeles Police and Fire Pension Board, and those are the ones that come to mind. Some ad hoc committees, and then most of the other ones are county or state.
Uh-huh. So you're searching for a commission that you like, or?
No, I'm not searching for a commission. I was not searching for a commission. I was found.
There's been a lot of controversy surrounding the housing authority, the city of Los Angeles, over the last several years, prior to our current general manager, and so it's interesting that you would want to take on this challenge. It is a challenge. The housing, for some reason, the housing authority has always been a challenge, and so I'm just I'm actually pleased that you're coming on board, help give guidance, and know that historically you've been a tremendous advocate for economic development, particularly in the south side of Los Angeles. So
Thank you.
the other thing is, I just wanted to, we didn't have the opportunity to meet, and I understand there was some confusion about your appointment. I don't know what it was, but
Right.
That's been clarified. But you're coming in 2 months before, literally 2 months before the end of the mayor's term. And,
Right.
And it's likely that the next mayor, as the predecessors, have requested resignations from all their commissioners. But it does put you in position to be first in line to be considered. And so I think, well, whoever the mayor is next time, I think they would be well suited to have your service. So,
Thank you.
So I just wanted to mention that.
Yes, I was
The
aware
fact
of
that
that.
we're coming in 2 months before
I was aware.
is, and that the mayor is likely to ask for resignations is not indicative of any expectations on our part, other than that you will continue to serve and certainly have the opportunity to do so. Unless you screw it up in the next
Right,
2 months, then you're in
exactly.
big trouble.
Exactly.
But,
That would be a record for me. I usually take a year at least to screw things up.
okay. But I'm well aware of your history, and I know that you've contributed to Los Angeles in many different ways, both in the private sector and in volunteer service to the city. So I don't have a whole bunch of questions, and I appreciate your service. And we're not expecting any other members to be here.
Okay.
So I'm just sending this on as a recommendation. I will send it on, and Arnold, I was just going to call you. Yeah. So let me.
Well, I'd like to, I mean, I appreciate that. I would like to speak from this side.
Okay. Well, you put in a card.
Actually, I put it in the card.
Okay. So we're opening public comment. We have one card.
Thank you. Good morning. I appreciate the background, and you mentioned the redevelopment, that you were a part of CRA, and you mentioned the redevelopment corridors in South Central are very narrow. So,
Please direct your comments to the committee.
okay, but I'm addressing the
No, you.
commentary that he made.
No, but you said you, and I didn't make those statements. Mr. Hudson did, and I just want to remind you that you're supposed to direct your
Okay,
comment.
so-
Because I'm anticipating that you're going to ask him a question.
I am going to ask him a
Mr.
question.
Hudson, you don't have
So I
to.
would ask you the question then. Sir, he made the statements that he was part of CRA. He made the statement that the redevelopment corridors in South Central are very narrow. And so my question is isn't there a greater portion of South Central LA that is blighted? And isn't that a fundamental reason to have CRA to improve blighted properties? And then I would ask, you're familiar with the end of CRA. This is a report, well, this is actually a motion by Supervisor Antonovich from January 15, 2013, and it's regarding the Clean Water Act. But in his motion, he mentions redevelopment funds that have come back to the county. He mentioned $742 million. So just doing a little bit of average work in figuring that, let's say you've been getting $600 million over the last 5 years. That's $3 billion in money going to the redevelopment agency. Can you point out $500 million, or Mr. Chair, can you ask if there's $500 million of public housing that's been constructed in the last 5 years? Because that's a lot of money. And if not, here's another article. Well, I run out of time, and I might continue this my public comment, but that's just a couple of simple answers. I go to a lot of meetings, too. Thank you.
The answer is yes. So with that, item number 2. Oh, we're going to send with a recommendation to the council to approve,
Thank you very much.
not a committee report, but it's a recommendation from the chair.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Item number 2 is motion Weezer Buscaino relative to authorization to reprogram $45,000 in community development block grant savings from the Boyle Heights Neighborhood City Hall to the El Centro de Ayuda Family Source Center and related actions.
Okay, is there anybody that needs to say anything about this? Mr. Sachs, you have a card in on this as well?
Yes, thank you. Very quickly, this is the time of the year that the county starts to allocate its CDBG funds. And in the previous 2 years, basically, they've mentioned that the funding is approximately $50 million, and it includes rolled over amounts averaging about, well, the previous year was like $13 million. And this past year was $12 million. So my question is, because what does this relate, who does the request for funds? And if the county, in its allocation for its CDBG funds, has so much money rolled over from their action plans, why is nobody looking at that and saying, you know what? Or is there a certain criteria that only allows you to ask
I-
for a certain amount of money?
I have no idea what how the county does their process.
Well, I'm not asking about how the county does their
You just
process.
did.
I'm saying they're allocating funds, but it includes excess fundings from previous years. So if
But
you
that's
know,
the county. This is a city matter.
but is this CDBG
Has
funds just
no.
coming from the federal government? Is it-
Federal government, yes.
There's no money coming from the county?
Not as far as I know. This has nothing to do with the county.
So, all right, so then let's ask the city the question. Does the city have rolled over CDBG funds, excess funds left over that the public may not be aware about? Or better yet, how much is allocated by the city in a yearly portion? I can tell you the county has $56 million. How much does the city allocate for its CDBG funds totally?
100%, yes, to both questions.
100% of what? How much is the amount?
I'm answering your questions. 100% is allocated, and the answer to the question of, do we have rollover money, the answer is yes.
But you're saying 100%.
Okay, I answered your questions.
No, you didn't.
Yes, I did. You didn't ask that. On this item, this is a simple measure to allocate 45,000 that was allocated to, in one form, in Mr. Weezar's district. He wants to transform that into a different project, and that's standard practice with a qualified agency, and in this case, they've met that criteria. So with that, it's my pleasure to recommend approval of this item to the council. Item number 3.
Item number 3 is a communication from the mayor and CAO to report relative to the results of the gang reduction and youth development request for proposals for evaluation services and authorization to negotiate and execute contracts for the period April 1st, 2013 to March 31st, 2014, and authorization to amend the contract for a no-cost extension with Urban Institute with a revised end period of March 31st, 2013.
Okay, did anybody want to make a presentation on this? I did have one question. So, did we get the report?
Yes, we did.
When did that?
The report.
I'm speaking of the final
Yes,
3-year report.
Right, the reports were attached to the transmittal, and I can potentially go through some of the
okay,
important
here it
parts of
is.
the report.
Why did it take so long?
Well, a
They
couple
had a 3-year contract. They were doing annual sub-reports, and then this contract was supposed to end in, I believe it was April of last year, or March of last year.
No, the report was delayed due to two factors. One, we wanted to do a crime comparison between grid zones and county-related areas that didn't have the program, rather than compare grid zone crime reduction to the rest of the city.
So that was not in the original contract?
Well, the sheriff's data was delayed. That was something that we had no control over. So we wanted to make sure that in year 3, we had a comparison group that was valid, more valid than
Okay.
comparing grid zones to the rest of the city.
Okay, and so we got that, when did we get that information?
The exact date,
Oh, approximately.
we got it a few weeks ago.
Really?
Yeah.
So they just had to plug in the numbers and,
Well, no, the problem was getting the data from the sheriff's department,
but once they had the data, they just plugged in
and they
those
had to do a
numbers?
comparison.
Okay. All right. We have one speaker card. Oh, yes, Mr. Sachs. Mr. Sachs, let me just say, I don't have any problem with your questions or anything. It's just that sometimes they're so vague and general that it's impossible for a member without a research team doing some research to answer most of your questions. So I don't mean to be facetious, so I can only give you general answers to your general questions. So that's.
Councilman,
yeah.
I'm not going to discuss that. This was, and actually, by commenting on this, I won't comment on number 4. This is a gang reduction and youth development service, program service. You're taking money,
No, this is to approve the research and analysis for the GRID program.
okay, you know what, I'll pass on this. I'll pass on this, and I'll just wait till number 4.
Okay. Thank you. Okay, so I don't have any more questions with regard to this, and we'll send that on to council with my recommendation for approval. Item number 4, thank you, Mr. Cespedes.
Item number 4 is Housing Authority of the City of Los Angeles and CAO reports relative to request by HACLA for the city to waive the payment in lieu of taxes to the city in the amount of $4.054 million to provide funds for programs at HACLA public housing sites and to fund the transition of certain city recreation services to nonprofit organizations. And this item was also referred to the Budget and Finance Committee.
Okay, we have a
Good
whole bunch of
morning,
people.
good morning, Councilmember Madeline Rackley with the CAO. In addition to what Mr. Randall has explained, for several years, the city's Recreation and Parks Department provided recreational services to 7 HACLA recreation centers at essentially no cost to HACLA. The general fund was funding those services. But due to the city's budget constraints a couple of years ago, the city started asking HACLA to reimburse some of the Rec and Parks costs. And it has, they've been able to pay those funds out of the pilot fees, but it's gotten to the point now where that request is not really sustainable. So in cooperation with Rec and Parks, HACLA is embarking on a process of hiring nonprofit organizations to provide the same recreational services at those facilities, and those nonprofit organizations will raise their own funds and be self-sustaining after the first year or so of operation. So that the services will be provided, but
That's the theory.
well, actually, they've already started. They've got Marvis is underway, and a new one will be online
So they've raised
shortly.
money already?
Yeah, and so
Okay, maybe we can-
HACLA can speak to that, but the process is working, so, but HACLA is here and they can address that. So we would recommend that,
Okay, let me
Yes, yes,
understand
sir.
the payment in lieu of taxes.
yes, sir.
So they're no longer going to be giving that to the city? They're going to be using it to hire nonprofits to provide services?
The pilot fees will be used several ways. One will go to the mayor's office for Summer Nightlights program. Part of the money will go to pay for the Summer Youth Employment Program, and part of it will go to pay for the recreational services until the nonprofits completely take over.
Okay, and when is that time? When will the nonprofits be ready to?
Oh, sure.
Commence in the Rec and Parks.
Ken Simmons is here from HACLA who can
Yeah.
address the whole schedule.
Okay,
Yes, Councilman, there were 7 different sites, and we've already transitioned 2 sites, Mar Vista and Pueblo del Rio, to nonprofits. The next 2 up are Ramona and...
can I ask, you're giving money to the city for specific
No,
programs?
yes, we are, all these are city programs. So the Summer Night Lights is a city program that we're helping to support through pilot. The Summer Youth Program, the employment, that's a city program that we're providing through pilot to provide jobs to our children in our sites. And the recreation program,
Why doesn't the money just go into the general fund?
Well, historically, the city signed an agreement, I think in the 30s, to, where
Have
HACLA
payment in lieu
would
for
pay,
pilot.
yeah.
Okay.
And
But why doesn't, since they're not,
well, they are paying the city.
Yeah, they're paying the city, I get that. But why wouldn't it just go into the general fund and go through the regular budget process?
Well,
The historical part of the agreement is that you're using resident rents, we are exempt from taxes, so we use resident rents when they go to the city, and then it's a mutual agreement between the city and the agency about how to use this money. And the emphasis over all these years has been to try to benefit the residents in some way or another. And all these programs benefit our residents.
Okay, I'm back to the CAO. Why are we not sticking this in the general fund? And allowing
Councilmember, Sure,
the
sure.
city council have an opportunity to consider where we think the best use of that money is?
I can't answer that right this minute, but I will find out and I will let you know immediately. I can answer that question this afternoon for you.
All right. Okay, so the nonprofits, I'm concerned about the service levels. What would be the difference in your mind of what Rec and Parks was doing versus what these nonprofits are going to be doing?
My vision is that it'll be more equal, and that's been our experience.
More equal?
More or equal.
Oh, okay. That's been more equal.
Yeah, no, it's, in Mar Vista, I think the Recreation and Parks would agree that it's actually a more robust program than what Recreation was able to do, given their budget limitations. And the advantage of working with these nonprofits is that they're able to raise revenues through.
What were the services that were rendered by Rec and Parks?
Rec and Park, they had, the open gym time, they had various classes, art classes, some tutoring classes, other recreational programs. Mar Vista is providing the same thing, plus they're providing college.
And they did it at the project sites?
They did. And these are actually community programs. They're not only for our residents. What happens is that Recreation located them at our sites, but they're actually provided to the community. They're open to the community.
Okay, well, so tell me about the nonprofits.
Well, so far we had Boys and Girls Club, who is running the Mar Vista, and that's a program that's a group that's coming out of Santa Monica. Police Athletic League is running the Pueblo del Rio. We have a current RFP out for 2 more sites. The next 2 will be Pico Gardens and Ramona Gardens, and we have a lot of interest. We had about 7 providers who came and take a look at that RFP. And the last ones will be the 3 South Central sites. And the reason some of these are being delayed is because...
What about San Fernando Gardens?
San Fernando Gardens has never had a Recreation and Parks program.
Why?
You'd have to ask Recreation and Parks. And I don't know if it's a facility issue, whether they don't have the same amount of facilities, but I don't know why Recreation Park had not set up there.
They have one very close by, council member.
Well, there's a park next door, but
In a gym, there's a gym very close by.
you don't fund that.
No,
No, it's a city facility.
I don't like that. Because that community has been clamoring for services for years. It's fine they have a park next door, but there's no direct services being provided out of HACLA.
Councilmember, would you like me to arrange a meeting with you and your staff regarding the services provided there at Rec? We can arrange for Rec and Parks to meet with you and find out what is actually being provided at the facility?
Recreation and Parks?
Right, because they're providing some services, I believe, in that area.
Well, Recreation and Parks is funded fully by the city.
Right,
HACLA's not providing any money to their park.
right. Do you want HACLA to be providing services there?
Absolutely. Just like it does in the other projects.
Okay, then I am sure they'd be willing to meet with you about how that could work.
Well, I'd like to know before I approve this item. Mr. Sachs, public comment?
Yes, sir, thank you. It was mentioned, 3 programs, summer nights, summer youth employment, and recreation programs. So I'm thinking, why isn't summer nights actually a subset of recreation programs? Because actually, that's what it is. So it's actually 2 programs. But you may have heard the gentleman mention that HACLA is a nonprofit, and it's exempt from taxes. So if it's a nonprofit exempt from taxes, how is the city able to waive the payment in lieu of taxes? Doesn't make sense. It's nonprofit. Gentleman mentioned it. Maybe you can ask that question and get an answer. I don't know. That may be not a specific type of question. And then the nonprofits to provide other programs, the nonprofit organizations, well, this is a nonprofit organization. So this is a nonprofit organization that's going to hire more nonprofit organizations to provide programs. Is there any part of this gang reduction and youth development program that would be included? Because something tells me, and I'm not sure, but these housing projects may have a problem with gangs. So do they reference that? Because that's a mayor's program also. You have the Summer Nights as a mayor's program. You have the Summer Youth Employment, which is a mayor's program. Why isn't gang reduction part of the mayor's? It is a mayor's program. Why isn't one of these programs? And then they mentioned the ability to raise revenues. So are they going to include more money to this program instead of more money for low-income housing with the revenues they raise? Because this is addressing just the fact that they're paying in lieu of taxes. And you know who else does that? DWP. They pay in lieu of taxes.
Okay, I'm going to move on to item number 5. Maybe you guys could recommend an amendment that I might offer as in form of a recommendation. Otherwise, I'm taking this under consideration. Item number 5.
Pardon me, Councilmember.
No item number 5?
No item number 5.
Then I'm taking a 5-minute recess.
Marissa?
I can't adjourn the meeting because we do have a public comment card. Arnold Sachs?
Yes, thank you very much, Arnold Sachs. And since this meeting not only addresses housing, but economics and development, and based on the action, I'm sure that it was a wonderful meeting yesterday. Oh, you better start my time. We might be here 5 minutes. Regarding LAX and the expansion of LAX and the things that are going on with Ontario, I'm sure that it was probably brought up that LAWA sets the landing rate fees at Ontario. And since they're higher at Ontario, I'm thinking of an economic development that would really help the city. You make a motion and you put a ballot measure on that raises the sales tax in the counties that abut LA County, Orange County and Riverside County and Ventura County, and you make it so that people who live 30 miles within the border pay 10% more in sales tax, and people who live 30 miles away pay 20% more in sales tax, because you're setting the fees for outside business interests. And you'd be able to raise money and say, people want to shop in LA, using the same logic they used at LAWA to raise the fees at Ontario Airport. People don't want to land at Ontario because of the economy, when in actuality, it's the cost that's incurred by the planes. And you could say, what's a nickel or a dime here when you're talking about a pound? But when you're talking about 15, 20, 30, 40, 50, 100 tons, those nickels add up. So if you use the same kind of logic that they used at LAWA, and you increase the sales tax in the surrounding counties, people will want to shop in LA because it's cheaper, it's less expensive. And you could say they're shopping in LA because of the economy, and not because we're charging more. We have the ability to do that. It's insanity.
Pardon me, Mr. Chair. For the record, for item number 4, we are holding that in committee?
Absolutely.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
The meeting is now adjourned, council member.